Okay, so today we're going to talk about solving a quadratic equation by factoring. Please make sure that you take out some loose leaf paper so you can copy down some notes if you chose not to print this out. Now, a quadratic equation is anything that has an x and a squared. So we're going to use our factoring skills so that we can solve these types of equations. So to solve a quadratic equation, what we're going to do is first make sure the equation is set equal to 0. If it is not, you're going to use addition and subtraction to get it in standard form. Standard form always says that the x squared term comes first, the x term comes second, and the plain numbers come third. Then we're going to factor the equation and set each factor equal to 0. Once we set each factor equal to 0, we're going to solve each of our equations. So if we look at the first example, it says x squared minus 81 equals 0. Since my equation is equal to 0, the first thing I'm going to do is factor this. If I look at the x squared term and the 81 term, I know they're both perfect squares. To factor that, it's dots. This is a difference of two perfect squares. So that factors to x plus 9 and x minus 9. Once I've factored, since it says equals 0, I'm going to t-chart it. I'm going to, over here, write x plus 9 equals 0. I'm going to solve this side. I get x equals negative 9. And then over here, when I solve this side, I'm going to add 9, and I get x equals positive 9. A little trick here. Since this is a squared term, you should get 2 answers. And that's all we have to do. So we've learned how to factor, and you do know how to solve a simple equation, so we're just putting those two skills together. The second one here, first thing that I notice is that my equation is not equal to 0. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides so that the equation is equal to 0. So now I have x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 0. Now to factor this, they have nothing in common, those 3 terms on the left. There's 3 terms, so it can't be the difference of 2 squares. So I'm going to try the AM method, add multiply. So I'm going to think of factors of 7 that add to 8. Hopefully you pick 1 and 7. So now if I factor this factors to x plus 1, x plus 7. Now again, I want to solve it because it's equal to 0, so I'm going to t-chart this, and if I set the left factor equal to 0 and solve, I get x equals negative 1. If I set the right side equal to 0 and I solve, I get x equals negative 7. So those are my 2 answers. Again, when you see x squared, you should have 2 answers. If we look at the third example, again, the first thing that I notice is that it is not equal to 0. So I'm going to move the 8x over so that I can put it in standard form. This becomes x squared minus 8x equals 0. Now, if I look at those 2 terms, I notice that there's an x here and an x here. So if I factor that, this is factoring with a GCF, a greatest common factor. I can pull an x out of each term. Very important. When I go to t-chart here, I have to set this x equal to 0. I'm done. And then this one, x minus 8 equals 0. When I solve, I get x equals 8. So my 2 answers for this problem are 0 and 8. Last question that we're going to do. Again, I want my equation equal to 0. In this case, because this is a negative over here, I'm going to move my x squared term to the other side. We don't want to factor when we have a negative x squared. Not in this class, at least. You can do it, but we're not going to do that in this class. So now my equation is equal to 0. They don't have a greatest common factor. It's not the difference of 2 squares. And since this is a number bigger than 1, we're going to do our headphone method. So the first thing I'm going to do is 3 times 2, and I get 6. Now I'm looking for factors of 6 that add to negative 5. hopefully you pick -3 and -2. If you need to, you can list all your factors. We could do 1 and 6, 2 and 3. The next one would be 3 and 2. And again, since this is positive, the signs have to match. Since they want to add to -5, I need two negatives. This gives me -7. This one here gives me -5. Now, once I find these two factors, we're going to expand that middle term. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3x squared, use these, minus 3x minus 2x plus 2. Since I have 4 terms and I'm factoring, now I cut it down the middle and I do factor by grouping. My greatest common factor on the left is a 3x. I'm left with x minus 1. I have to have an x minus 1 on the right side. So I pulled out on this side a -2. Remember, if you can't figure it out, cheat. Do -2x divided by x, and that's how you get your -2. So here my factors are the fronts, so this term and this term, so 3x minus 2, and the repeated factor, which is x minus 1. Once again, I want a T-chart so that I can solve them. Here I have 3x minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to add 2. And in this case, I have to actually do one extra step because there's a 3 in front of the x. So on the left side there, I get x equals 2/3. That's one answer. And over here, x minus 1 equals 0. If I add 1 to both sides, I get x equals +1. So again, those are my two answers. Please make sure if you have any questions, you write them down and either email me or ask me next time you see me.